but the Halcyon. So we talked about this being the honeymoon book, right? So Mon Mothma is there at the wedding. She meets with Leia, and she kind of sees an opportunity with the Halcyon, and that they can, Leia and Han can go on the Galactic Starcruiser as we know it from the Disney parks, but they can go on the Galactic Starcruiser, the Halcyon, and be part of this big initial cruise after the the yoke of the Empire has been removed, and they can get good footage of her on there, and it's going to be good publicity for the New Republic, essentially.
Yeah.
And Leia, like, I feel like she could have avoided some of the conflict later on in the book that she has with Han if she had kind of talked to him about it a little bit.
Yep.
But she kind of drops it on him in a way that it seems like he doesn't really have an option. Like he's just got to do it.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of alluded to it earlier. That was my biggest frustration was with the book, was like seeing the Halcyon is cool. And it's kind of a marketing excuse to have the new, like the Halcyon is the Star Wars hotel, right? Right. Okay, that's cool. You can go stay in it, ties into a book. Okay, whatever. I don't really have a problem with that. It's kind of cool.
And they didn't dwell on it. It wasn't
over the top
to me as I was reading it, and knowing what the Star Wars hotel is. If you read this book and you had no idea what that is, you would never have picked up.
Yeah, they definitely like tried to mention some of the things you can do on the ship, or that you can eat or whatever, but it was subtle enough that I don't think you would really notice, and so that didn't bother me at all. And it was kind of cool. And I saw some people online complaining about it. I'm like, it doesn't really bother me. But the thing that did bother me, it was nothing to do with the Halcyon itself, was the fact that Leia keeps ignoring Han and their honeymoon. And I know she's driven, and she wants to help the Republic. She didn't even want to go on a honeymoon, right? At first, Han just wants to go out to some beach somewhere and relax. And she's like, no, I don't want to. I want to like work. I have the war is over. I have to help rebuild the Republic. But they decide to go on this honeymoon, and she keeps ignoring Han and trying to work constantly, so much that Han has to go off by himself and find stuff to do. And like, she does learn the lesson eventually, but it's still kind of sad as a reader. And I just got married, a year ago, right? And like on my honeymoon, my wife and I went, we had a very strict, like, no work, you were going to like spend time with each other. Right. And that was so nice. And it makes me kind of sad reading that Han and Leia aren't really spending time with each other. And she's kind of ignoring him and just running off. And he's, of course, then doing off stuff on his own too. And so she comes back to the room to try to spend time with him. And he's off, playing Savak. And it made me a little sad, because I'm like, I know their relationship isn't perfect, and we know how they end up in The Force Awakens, but it just made me really, I guess, frustrated trying to, like, they have such a that they're just not willing to make time for each other.
But I guess that's what it's all about, right? Like they're kind of revealing, in this book, that something that not necessarily revealing, we kind of already know the struggles that they have in their relationship.
Yeah. And
they're kind of setting the groundwork at the earliest stage. Like they're in you talk about the honeymoon phase of a marriage, and both you and I are both married. Like you're still technically kind of in that honeymoon phase.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been married for quite a while, and the honeymoon phase was a long time ago. So relationships kind of progress, but we know where they end up, like you said, and we know that they don't stay together, and so you can kind of see the seeds of that already. As to like the conflicts that they have, and her priorities and his.
It's not all her, to be clear. It's both of them. I do think
like the priority side of things is Leia for sure.
Yeah.
I think she prioritizes the needs of the galaxy sometimes over the needs of Han, and he can't necessarily deal with that.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel, like you said, you do feel bad for Han. You also kind of like, well, you're marrying Princess Leia,
But I guess the thing that's frustrating was it wasn't like, I think because they just rushed into it, right? They never had that conversation. They never talked about what life would be like. They just said, okay, we're going to do this. And they instantly got married. And then they never considered that this would there's actually like a commitment, and you have to like make an effort and all of that stuff. And
well, if you think about the amount of time that they've actually spent together,
not actually all that long.
It's not a lot. Like
Yeah.
he got frozen in carbonite. He's gone for like a whole year while she's going on adventures with like Luke and Lando and stuff, like in the comics. But you know, there's not really, you know, she didn't spend a ton of time with him, and he comes out of the carbonite in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Like,
and the wedding's like
the movie's
days later after the movie ends.
Come out of carbonite. And then they have their whole adventure there to defeat the Empire over you know, what, a couple weeks or however long that movie is supposed to be across. But
it's a good point. So in Han's time, it's like basically like, I don't know, 3 days after he said, "I love you." You know, it's
that little. Wow. Yeah,
I don't know, like, because he gets frozen, right?
Yeah,
he gets frozen in carbonite.
Or she just admitted her love. He says, "I know." You know, a way of saying "me too."
Yeah.
And then he's got all this empty space, and then he jumps into, and now they're married. So like
he gets unfrozen. They have a big the Battle of Endor. They escape Tatooine, Battle of Endor, and they within a couple days of the Battle of Endor, they get married. And so
that's why you can't call this book the courtship of Princess Leia.
It's true. It was a courtship.
This is just straight marriage, you know, like and maybe that's kind of a, you know, rushing into marriage is never a great idea.
Exactly. And I guess that's the other thing that frustrated me is like I was like, why there? I feel like maybe not Han, but Leia, I feel like it would be one who would be very, I mean, she's just swept up by him. She would be one who would, I think through things more and try to plan things out. And they just jump right into it without talking, really truly talking about it. Like, what does this mean for their lives? And then as a result, they, you know, she's working, he's going off and doing his own thing now because he's bored. And I don't know, it made me very, it really did bother me. It made me very like, it was not as enjoyable to read because of that. I was like, why are they making these decisions? You know, and it kind of fits with their characters a little bit, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, there are two characters that, if you really think about it, it absolutely makes sense that they would have this kind of you know, short, passionate thing that happens. They get married, then they kind of over time realize that maybe it's not the best thing for them, and then they separate. And that's, you know, essentially what happens. But yeah, I definitely, maybe it didn't impact me as much as it impacted you, I don't think, but there were definitely times where I was feeling bad for Han, and kind of like, he came across as much more like the hopeless romantic.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just want to go on this honeymoon and just spend every waking minute with this woman because I'm absolutely in love with her.
Yep.
And she's like, I'm absolutely in love with Han, but
I got stuff to do. Exactly.
The galaxy needs me, and that's really what's important. And
I get why she's saying that, right? She's looking at the bigger picture and trying to save, you know, help the galaxy. The war just ended, or is technically wrapping up, you know.